Welcome, everybody, to Omnic Lab. What's going on? We're a podcast that focuses on the strategies inside the game of Overwatch, and we're going to learn today through trial and error, just like in a lab setup, even if things get a bit crazy and potentially blow up. We're going to broom up some team comp strategies, stir in some tips to help you play better, and hopefully equip you, the listener, with just a few more instruments you need to gain a strategic edge. This week is episode number 66 of Omnic Lab, and joining us on the far right, if you're watching the live stream or the YouTube, is CurryShotTV, back in the Wild West and high nooning it up for CLG as a streamer and a top 500 DPS player to talk McCree. So reload your Peacekeepers and kick over a tumbleweed and maybe even slap on your BAMF belt buckle. So here we go. Curry, welcome to the show. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is CurryShot. I came over from League of Legends. I was a amateur player and then professional coach in that game, and I came over to Overwatch and have been high rated since the time I started playing it. I used to scrim before season 1 started, and I'm actually known for my trolling, actually, but I have a lot of fun because I can do that. I can do that and still win. So, yeah, we call it the McCree. That's what we call it.
The McCree. I like it.
There we go.
I know Andres likes to call him the McCrazy, so that's what he pulls out when he goes in deep, going the McCrazy flanks.
Oh yeah.
So.
McCrazy.
Well, that's a good short introduction. Joining me is always, like, the main host is Andres, and I'm Rob, and this week we're gonna dive right in. We want to make sure that we have a little bit of a discussion. Kind of, Curry wanted to talk a little bit about this, as Andres and I did, about kind of like the disenfranchisement of playing Overwatch extensively now that we're towards the end of season 5, kind of like how we adjust with the burnout of it. I think that'd be a good discussion at the end. So we're going to jump right into how to play McCree and then discuss that at the end, because we know if you're downloading this in the archives at least and not just necessarily week to week, you're here for the McCree, so we get it. Trust me, we'll get into it. All right, so the first announcement is next week, September 1st, we are going to do our game night. So the game night is going to be open. We had to move it again because I'm actually going to be away at an English camp that I'm teaching at. Andres could have made this week or next week, but we're just going to do it next week instead. And we had more mods and admin that can show. So if you want to join in, you want to do the giveaways, you want to hang out with us, jump in on September 1st, and we'll do a game night that evening. Again, that evening is very broad. It's kind of like noon, generally speaking, until super late or until you're ready to quit. Because we have EU, Australia. I'm hailing in from Japan in the morning before my other podcast, and Andres is there through and through like a champ until he gets off work until the end. So we'll make it happen. No new updates this week from the Omnic Meta website. I believe Switch was on vacation, so he wanted me to let you know that the data on Doomfist is still going hot. So if you guys want to check out kind of the impact of Doomfist over those first couple weeks of his introduction into the competitive meta, you'll want to go read that article. And then, Andres, you want to talk about the Patreon thing? We don't have a deadline for just yet, but the deathmatch thing that we were talking about in the pre-show?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking with Rob. We want to create an event for patrons. We're still figuring out all of the details, but we want to kind of get you guys included from the beginning so we can kind of make something that you guys want to participate in it too. But we want to basically launch our first official Omnic Lab tournament. We want to make it a 4v4 team deathmatch tournament once the deathmatch is out, which probably is pretty soon. But yeah, we just want to get everyone from the community kind of included. And sometimes it's really hard to make the 6v6 team work because it's just a lot of people that have to come together and you can't make as many teams. So we were thinking about trying the 4v4, maybe even a 3v3. We want to hear your feedback. We'll probably be doing this about a month and a half from today when we're speaking about it. So reach out to us through Discord, through Twitter. You can email the show. If you're interested in participating, we'll give you guys a few more details in the upcoming weeks. Right now, it's just an idea that is kind of in the making, but we, like I said, want to bring it up into the light so we can include you guys in the creation of this tournament. Hopefully, really fun. Hopefully, we can have some prizes and just a cool community event.
To quote Reinhardt, glittering prizes. So we'll get into that a little bit later, and we'll keep you posted. I think it's time to get a little McCrazy. So let's get in the interview. All right. So, Curry, let's start with the general basic stuff. So, what brought you to McCree? What brought you to Overwatch from League of Legends? That's always the story in and of itself.
So, I wasn't happy with how things were going in League in the sense that I felt that the beginning of the game wasn't, well, balanced itself. And I heard about a new game just called Overwatch. I saw actually some of the League players on Ember, which was the last team I actually coached, play Overwatch because they were in the closed beta. And I was like, well, it's open beta now. I kind of want to try it just to see if I like the game and if I could make the switch. And I actually really love the game, like the minute I played it. And in League of Legends, I was known for a character called Graves. And then the very familiar hero in Overwatch is McCree. They have a lot of similarities. So that's kind of what brought me over to McCree. It's just the character itself rather than what it does.
So the connection with your League background.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
All right. Andres, did you have any questions before we get started in the data side?
Yeah. So how long have you been playing Overwatch? Did you get it right after that closed beta?
I got it on the open beta. I watched it during the closed beta, but I never actually played. So I got it around, I'd say, June-ish.
Nice. And you've gotten pretty high up in the ladder. Would you want to talk to us a little bit about that? Your ladder climbs and how it's been? What heroes do you usually use?
Oh, yeah, sure. So back in Season 1, when it just got released, I actually placed really low. And the reason is I didn't really take the game like as seriously as I should have, because I was like, well, my friends are placing, in 75 plus, right? So I better, just kind of have fun with it, and it just didn't work out too well. But yeah, I ended up using McCree. Season 1 and 2 was actually a McCree one trick, and I ended up using McCree just purely to climb after placements, because I was like, man, I'm really good at this hero. I know how to just counter everything, and obviously a lot of the newer heroes don't exist back then. So it was a really straightforward game back then.
Gotcha.
So yeah, McCree was
really powerful. They had to nerf him quite a bit before. I believe Season 3 when he was finally in a decent spot, borderline underpowered.
Yeah. No. So what would happen is, so they nerfed him, then they buffed him again, then they nerfed him again. So
that's right.
Basically, yeah, his right click was broken. You can almost one-shot tanks with it.
Oh,
and people were right-clicking more than left-clicking. You just flash the Reinhardt shield and right-click. That was, you had 2 McCree players and you just did that. And then before there was no hero limit either. Remember?
Oh, I remember that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was just like that. And when they nerfed the Fan the Hammer, then they buffed his left-click range. So he was like a Widowmaker essentially. He had like his drop. Yeah,
I do remember that too.
The drop off was insane. So it was just like, and
Fara was completely unplayable.
Yeah. She was not only that. The reason being why playable, it's not only because McCree, because they decided to buff Zenyatta at the same time, where he did 50% Discord damage. So McCree one-tapped any 200 HP hero at around 30 meters. So that was ridiculous, because she hit the Discord target in the head and he's just dead. One hit. There was no counter.
Oh, those were the times for us McCrees.
Days.
Yeah, they nerfed that quick. but it was definitely Zenyatta more than McCree.
Yada's
But
heyday.
yeah, but it was still pretty
It
ridiculous.
was good times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it was good times.
McCree,
Everyone duo with me then. Good, and that meta. They were like, "Oh shit, McCree's OP. Well, we need to do it with this guy." It was hilarious.
Yeah, McCree is one of those heroes that has gone through a lot of iterations, and I think we're finally at a spot where he feels pretty good. He doesn't feel underpowered, but he doesn't feel super overpowered. In the right hands, a McCree can be really scary, but you can also shut him down, focus him down, that sort of thing.
You have
So
to focus him. Yeah.
for
No,
sure.
yeah. He is. The reason he's like in a balanced state is because there is a clear like weakness, and that's his mobility. He has combat roll, sure, but he can get jumped on and just die. Like,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
can't just sprint away
right.
with shoulder, like rocket jump, all this like crazy stuff. Like he has a clear weakness.
Yeah, and he's very
Yeah.
vulnerable once you're up close. He's rather squishy with 200 health, and as well as his frame. I feel like his model.
His hitbox.
Yeah,
his hitbox.
it's
is
easy.
Huge, yeah,
It's easy to
It's
hit.
kind of
yeah.
like the average.
exactly.
It's like an
Hitbox is
average
huge.
hitbox, and then the head isn't like drastically different than other hitboxes, you know. But the head hitbox does have the giant hat, so you're able to identify and aim easier towards the hitbox. You know what I mean?
That's correct. But before we get too
So-
deep into all of that stuff, let's talk a little more general about McCree. What do you see McCree being as his main role? When you pick McCree, what do you expect to get out of him versus maybe picking Soldier or Reaper or I don't know, even Widowmaker, right? I'm trying to think of other hitscan characters that kind of are similar to him.
So when I pick McCree, if they have a Fara Mercy, everybody's like, "Oh, we need to pick Soldier. We need to pick like some stupid pick like that." And sure, Soldier can do damage to them, but McCree can 2-tap a Fara Mercy, so she can't sustain through that. So on maps like Lijiang, it's actually, in my opinion, a lot better to pick McCree there because you can get within 20 meters before his fall off and go ahead and 2-tap a Fara Mercy. So it's not that hard to play McCree versus Fara Mercy. As in Soldier, sure, your drop off is twice the range of McCree, so you want minions drop off, but you're doing what? They nerfed it to 18, right? Or 19? I think it's 19. They nerfed it to 19.
I think I put it in the show notes. Yeah.
I think
No,
it's
Soldier.
19.
They nerfed. Yeah, 19 damage now, a bullet from Soldier. So it's like, it's just far better to just 2-tap somebody with McCree than it is to actually pick Soldier. So that's it's better to pick McCree to deal with Fara Mercy specifically. So on the lower ratings, Fara Mercy is really hard to deal with, and people always pick Soldier because that's what they hear from season 1. If the pro players say that, but in reality, if you're a good McCree and you're playing at these lower ratings, that will never be a problem.
I think I have quite of experience with the Fara Mercy with McCree, and I feel like as long as the map allows you to get at a relatively good range, McCree is quite effective with that. Not only to mention you have Deadeye, and like the moment you see Fara Mercy jump into the sky, you have like that tool that can just one-shot him out of there really quick. So that is very effective. And like you said, like McCree's damage is very bursty, especially if you hit a headshot in between or even like 2 headshots. It can be like an instant kill right then and there. Granted, you gotta get some practice to these things, but compared to Soldier, McCree's damage is very spiky. And like you said, when you're Soldier and you're trying to focus down a Mercy or a Fara up in the sky, not only you're suffering for some damage fall off, but Mercy is usually enough to just out heal the entire damage, and it's super hard to hit a Helix rocket on a Fara that is just flying up in the sky. So your burst potential is super diminished. While McCree still conserves a little bit as long as he's in the optimal range. If Fara is too high up in the sky, it can still be a little bit of a struggle. But like I said, then you have Deadeye if she's like that far high.
Yeah, altitude's actually calculated really weird in terms of damage fall off. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like I did some tests on damage fall off way back in the day, and altitude is, for whatever reason, it's not like, how to say it, like direct distance. Does that make any sense to you? It's like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you're like sitting in like an even field and there's right at you, that's like direct distance, but for altitude, it isn't calculated the same. I tested this on a watch point Gibraltar on the second
Interesting.
point.
Like
Yeah,
the
Is it closer or
relative
far?
fall off is different.
yeah, that like it's how it's calculated. It's ridiculous. Also in
Oh.
Temple of Anubis, when I was there's a special spot for McCree where you can combat on the pillar on the second point. It's calculated different on there too, because Dark Room is actually 20 meters out, and call it.
That's
If
pretty
you hit anything
interesting.
past dark, yeah.
So this is the first time I ever hear about this, and I've never tested it myself, so I have like no point of reference here. But I kind of want to like go try it out myself. So like you're saying like 20 meters, like if you're firing at a person that is in front of you, 20 meters is not the same as if you're firing 20 meters like straight above you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Interesting.
Would it be a further distance or a shorter distance?
I'm saying like
it feels like it's shorter.
Yeah, it feels like it's shorter. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
All right, we got some
in
science
theory,
to
it
test
should
out.
be,
You should test this
should
out. Yeah.
be weird in some senses because most heroes, when they're in the air and due to like favoring the shooter, right, your shots landing are going to hit them a little sooner than what they're actually seeing on their screen. And secondly, especially with Fara and Mercy in particular, they're not abiding by a specific trajectory of falling that isn't really modifiable. They actually have like the little jump jet, or like Mercy can like tap the GA instead of falling harsh. She can like stagger it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of wonky that way. So I can imagine that is most likely what they're trying to opt their calculations to counteract, in my guess. But yeah, we probably should move forward. Like when you're playing McCree, what do you think the like your number one thing to tell people that are like bronze, silver, gold, somewhere in that lower bracket that you're like, okay, this is what you should be prioritizing as you're transitioning into becoming more effective rather than just playing the hero because it's what your team needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think the number one thing that less experienced players should be focusing on is keeping the backline alive while being able to score kills. Like it's not just about doing damage. You always hear I got gold damage, right? But they hit a huge ass like roadhog right in front of you. You know what I mean? And just keep hitting him over and over again while he's getting healed, and you're feeding their supports ult charge. But it's more about scoring kills on the opposing DPS or the backline if possible. So just try to do damage. Don't go like super out of position, because you remember McCree's not mobile, right? So if you go out of position and trade 1-for-1, that's not the best idea. And there's this like common misconception: McCree needs to kill the Tracer or whatever, right? But if you keep trading 1-for-1 for Tracer, you can't really say, I'm doing my job. You know what I mean? Because there's still
you gotta keep the man advantage.
Yeah, and you gotta look at the bigger picture too.
Yeah.
You might still lose the fight. Maybe Tracer isn't the problem. It's a lot of different things that you have to look at.
The way I see McCree and how I kind of thinking about him is as in like this bodyguard. I just think of McCree as like the bodyguard of your backline. You're not necessarily like the best hero at spamming shields, for example, or you're not necessarily like the guy that's trying to break the front line. Your damage is very staggered, but yet very bursty, which makes it ideal to fire at like hard to hit targets, right? Like McCree is especially good at nailing tracers, at hitting Lucios, for example. Like you said, Fara Mercy, that's maybe like lingering in the sky or trying to get behind of your team. You're the guy who can put a lot of pressure on these heroes, and especially tracers who will try to get out of position from their team and flank you from the back. McCree's really adept at like keeping those out of the way, because you can just kind of roll towards the tracer, flashbang, hit her in the head, and now she's like, oh, I just got deleted in like 2 seconds kind of thing. So
Peace.
You're a huge threat to all these flankers, even like Genji's, right? But like you said, you're also very vulnerable. So you're not the type of hero that just wants to like stay in the back by yourself alone. It's more of a, I'm going to stay with my backline, and I can use my hit scan ability to kind of like just get really hard shots that other heroes have a hard time to get. I'm super bursty as well.
Yeah. Like it's very important not to isolate yourself, because usually the idea of McCree now is that he is anti-tank, but if they're running a Genji, Tracer, Winston, you're gonna get jumped on.
You're gonna get jumped on so fast. Yeah.
Time to change.
Usually you're the first target, right? Because they know that you're like the biggest threat to them, especially to Tracer and to Genji. Like usually if you are decent at McCree, you don't have as much as a hard time like tracking a Genji, for example, that's just jumping all over the place, unless he's like completely on top of you, maybe with like a Winston. Then at that point it's like, yeah, you're done. You're done here.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, there's also the thing is that like in higher elo especially, like these matchups are completely skill based than one sided.
Yeah.
So for instance, a lot of people say, well, like Tracer will just die to McCree. Like people expect if you pick McCree, Tracer's dead.
Right.
It's completely skill based, because if the Tracer is good, they'll play around your flashbang range and poke at you at 10 meters because that's their fall off. They'll just like if as soon as they see you flashbang, or if they see you use it somewhere else, you're just dead. You can't do anything unless you RNG a headshot. Well, it's not really RNG, but I mean, if you're good
like
enough,
a crazy flick.
Yeah, crazy flick. There we go. Headshot, and stuff like. Because I play both the matchup too, because I was really good at Tracer in season 3 as well, and it's very skill based. Like there are times where I will just dominate a McCree as Tracer because I know the matchup better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So same with Genji. Like if I play versus Sinatra as McCree, I get destroyed. Like it's happened. It's happened to me.
Well, I mean, that's hard not to get destroyed by Sinatra, though. That kid is insane.
That kid is unreal.
Yeah. I remember that day. I just said it was unlucky, but I'm being honest right now. That sucked.
Hey, that's another good point though, and that's the other one that I wanted to make. Like not only I see McCree as like the bodyguard, right, kind of role, but I also see him as a dueler. I think that McCree is a hero that has a lot of potential to win those little skirmishes or sometimes those 1v1s that happen in the game. You can duel Genjis, you can duel Tracers, you can duel even monkeys sometimes when they jump you. As long as you know how to stagger your cooldowns and you know how to move and you're hitting your shots, you're able to kind of duel almost anyone in this game, even Soldier or Reaper. And sometimes it all comes down to your flashbang. So let's talk a little bit about the flashbang, because I think that is a really, really important part of McCree's kit. And it's the one thing that gives him an edge at close range versus almost any hero in the game, even tanks, healers, whatever it is. Do you want to kick it off?
Me? Yeah, sure. So the thing about Flashbang is the McCree itself changes up the game, right? Because you have to play around the Flashbang range. So just the pressure of the skill itself is what makes it so strong, especially after the buff, man. Like the way you outplayed Flashbang before was by jumping, right before you got Flashbanged, right? So it wouldn't stop momentum. So that's why they made this buff. And although it may seem very small, it was really, really huge.
It was a huge change, I agree.
Yeah. So the pressure of Flashbang itself right now just this warrants a pick big time. So I think Flashbang is probably one of the strongest non-abilities in the game.
I think it's an interesting ability. Go for it, Rob.
Sorry, Andres. I was saying, like, when you do have those moments where the team fight and your team engages or is disengaging, and some flanker either is somebody that you're flanking or you're getting flanked and you're going to counteract it. If you get the first hit, like if you're throwing Flashbang first, and that's another like pretty much any 200 HP hero in most cases, again, in ideal situation, usually Flashbang initiation is going to end that fight. Like it's over, right? Because you basically just like can Flashbang one tap right click, and then like you empty the rest of your clip and hopefully it hits the second shot and they're done. Because like the flashbang plus the headshot itself is 165. So they're only left with 35 wiggle room at that point. And this can usually stop Sombra from recalling in how fast you can pull off that combo, you know?
Yeah. Sombra, with Sombra, it's better to fan the hammer with Sombra. And
okay.
Like those kind of heroes, just because the translocator, the speed of it is just.
I feel like
as soon as she gets unCC'd, she just can use it. Yeah, and it won't register the next hit. It's also like what you were with the tick rate too. I'm pretty sure, left click would work like easily in 120 tick servers.
I think that the main thing with the flashbang is if you are able to nail your target, you want to be able to finish it right then and there, and it changes depending on the heroes that you're facing, right? Like I usually have like these rules of thumb. If it's a 150 HP hero, I'll usually try to flashbang and do the headshot, right? So that includes tracers, señoras, baby divas, for example. You just can guarantee that kill right away. But then for 200 HP heroes, it gets a little trickier because there is a chance that if you just do the flashbang headshot, they might get healed, they might get shielded, or like you said, they have a chance to use translocator or any of the other escape mechanisms, dash, for example, as Genji, or deflect. Winston can maybe jump out of there, although he has way more HP than that. But for the 200 HP, I like the flashbang and fan the hammer as soon as you can. Try to get as many shots in as you can. And this change helps a lot with that, right? Like now that people can't have that momentum once they're stunned, it really helps like just keeping in a position where you can just unload your entire clip on it. Yeah. And for tanks is like even like a little bit different than that. Like if I'm dueling a tank, I usually just straight up try to unload a fan the hammer hit, then roll flashbang and like unload another fan the hammer, and usually that's enough to get him low enough. Yeah. And like the roll gives you the repositioning ability, so they kind of like confused a little bit for a sec.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Usually with the tanks and sorry, go ahead.
Do you have any rules of thumb like that you kind of like try to keep in mind for like certain heroes and your use of the flashbang?
Yeah. So the way I determine how I'm going to like left click versus right click after I flash really is the only like difference is Symmetra. Usually if you have a Symmetra tracer or something like that, I only run into this on Hanamura usually. Is I'll see a defense Symmetra, and then obviously defense Symmetra, and then a defense tracer, and like I always want to fan the hammer there because you just can't kill them through shield gen, because of the 225 HP. So it's like and it's always also ideal for 200 HP targets because they're up to 275. So with flashbang fan the hammer, you'll kill them with that too through shield gen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I do hate when Symmetra pulls down the
shield gen,
the shield gen, because it throws off all of your combos. You can't one-shot tracers anymore, and they can just recall on you.
It's hilarious because people play it into Hanzo as well, and they don't realize that the only way he's killing anything is with scatter arrow. So it's like if he won't kill, he won't one-shot anybody because it's 250 damage.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, gross.
Yeah, so it's really funny because it just makes Hanzo pretty garbage.
So do you have any like advanced? Do you have any advanced tricks for using fan the hammer? I know we talked a lot about the primary and secondary fire as it relates to combat role, but like I know that there is a couple tips and tricks that we got from Roadhog where you have to like walk forward. And I think even to a certain extent with Reaper, you have to aim a certain way as you're walking forward and kind of track a certain point of the body in order to make sure all of your shots are landing. Do you have any kind of tips for that? I mean, I know especially with fan the hammer, the overall range between and like you and the hero that you're attacking is going to also change based off of the hitbox as well. So do you want to kind of speak to that real quick before we get into Deadeye?
Yeah, so the way Overwatch works as a game itself, it's like the spread is always random. Like that's the one thing that like the one, there's no recoil, and two, just like in CSGO there's spray patterns and all that. There's none of that in Overwatch. It's random. So just like Reaper, for instance, I made a video about how It's better to aim at the chest, and you never want to aim at the head unless you are less than 3 meters away from the target, which is basically point blank, because you'll actually kill a 200 HP target in 3 hits if you shoot for the body, and in 4 hits if you shoot for head, because of how random the spread is. But straight up, so same with McCree. Like, the spread is really, really random. If you like right click into a wall, you can actually see the spread, right? So
Yeah.
One thing I did notice is just like slightly moving your cursor down when you fan the hammer. That's the only, because one of the bullets is always, even though it's random, it's always like way out of the spread. It's I don't know how to describe it. Like it's
On the outside of the ring
of the crosshair, yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've noticed
Yeah.
that too. There's always one that is like
There's always
to the
one.
right or the left, like really
exactly.
skewed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's always best to just like tilt your mouse down to make sure that like while the one on the right or left, hits the body, yeah.
Huh.
I don't know if you could call that advanced. It's just something that I noticed way back in the day when I was just like right clicking into a wall.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it helps knowing that that's kind of like the behavior of the hero, and I agree. You kind of want to get good or just practice your like compensating for the recoil, because it is a pretty big recoil, and if you don't lower your mouse as you're doing it, your shots will go way up. So you kind of want to get at least decent enough at controlling that recoil from the fan the hammer, and it has a couple of uses, right? Like, it's not only for when you flashbang to finish off a target. I use fan the hammer sometimes when I'm shooting at tanks and I'm like relatively close to them. I just unload the entire clip on them. It's good for like spamming on shields whenever you have to, like you need to put pressure in that right hard shield. Or when Winston, for example, jumps and he places his orb, one of the most important things is try to get rid of that shield as soon as you can. And fan the hammer usually speeds the process there rather than just shooting at the shield
so
yourself.
Like, fan the hammer, that's pretty much what I just would use it for, is basically shield breaking. Again, I remember like how in season 1 and season 2 scrims where it's like you'd always just right click the shield and then break the shield and then flashbang the shield, and then maybe right click after that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the fastest way just to try to burst down a target and just to break shields. But for the most part, I think this left click right now is probably the way to play him, only because you just want to kind of aim for heads, and tanks have huge hitboxes. Mm-hmm. So if that's all that's available to hit, like again, I'm thinking of like Hanamura first point, right? When you're defending against McCree, or even attacking, like you're not going to get an option to hit those. Or even you might, but you have to remember the drop-off range. You're not going to do that much damage. So you want to kind of focus what's in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. And like, just to remind those of you that are on console, when we say right click, left click is going to be fan the hammer. Secondary fire is traditionally right click. Sometimes different heroes will have different binds, but that's traditionally what the binding is. And then a left click is going to be just primary Peacekeeper fire that has a higher or it has the headshot capability with higher damage output because it's not automatic.
Right.
And Andres, did you want to start asking questions about combat roll, or do you want to jump into Deadeye?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about combat roll, since it's not a huge ability, but it does give McCree a lot more sustain, and it is a pretty essential part of his kit. It gives it that kind of like dueling flavor that I was talking about earlier. Let's kick it off with you, Curry. Like, how you use combat roll, how you like interweaving it into your battles. Any advanced tips that you got there?
Yeah. So one thing, whenever I think of combat roll, I always think about King's Row, first point, when you're attacking. So usually it's just best if you're within 20 meters of a target, you'll be able to burst down. You'll have 12 tries of just bursting down a target because of
basically, yeah,
because of having the reload. So usually I just kind of weave just strafe back and forth and kind of just look for a pick with that, and then I just combat roll and then just shoot again. On defense, though, obviously you have to be more conservative with it. So when people are jumping at you like straight out, then you want to be more conservative with it. So it's kind of like a repositioning tool on defense. On attack, it's kind of just like you have to use it more aggressively. You just don't want to sit around and just hold it the entire time.
I think that is a very a very important distinction to make. Like, a lot of people see the combat roll as a dodging tool, especially when you first start playing the game and you see that you can do the roll. You're like, oh, okay, this is how I get out of the way of things that want to kill me, basically. And yeah, that is one of the uses, especially if you're dueling like 1v1, repositioning yourself quickly like that can help you out a lot. But I think the other main news that sometimes gets overlooked, especially by the newer players, is this is a complete reload, like so much faster, plus the repositioning ability, which makes you a little harder to hit while you're doing the mini reload. But it basically, like you said, it gives you 12 straight shots, and it helps you keep the pressure going. And it's super important that you learn how to use this just for the reload, because especially if you're getting jumped and stuff, McCree's best defense is its offense, right? He's like kill or be killed, basically. No other stuff. Like other heroes have the option of disengaging or have defensive tools, like Mei has her ice block and stuff. McCree has none of this. If he gets jumped and he doesn't finish his target, he is probably dead.
Yeah. One of the things, I guess, my secret or like something that I've been testing out that might be way too me thinking into it too much is combat rolling to the left when you're on defense, because usually most people who play are right-handed, and you know how hard it is to combat roll to the left in the first place, unless you rebind your combat roll, because on the keyboard it's Shift and A, right? So
you have to use your two weakest fingers for that.
Yeah.
Right.
So also most players are right-handed, so they actually have to look the other way. Like if you move your mouse to the right and try to shoot too, it's also pretty difficult. So both ways, it's difficult to do and difficult to be shot at. So yes, that's one of the things that always kind of works for me, is just doing the harder thing. And I know it might sound like not important, but once you actually try it and you're like, wait a minute, that really works, because it actually makes a lot of sense.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. And
there's a lot of truth to that.
It's so funny that you said that, because I was literally thinking about that the other day. I was practicing some of my stuff, and I noticed that I have certain tendencies, right? I've noticed that when I turn around, I usually turn to the left, like I'm moving my mouse to the left, like inside towards my keyboard, and that's my natural how I turn around. Like sometimes
your natural flick.
Exactly. Like sometimes you're forced to do it the other way. But I've noticed that that's not like how I instinctively do it. And when I'm forced to flick the other way, I notice that I do miss more than if I had to do it the other way around. Or I feel like I'm out of my comfort zone, right? Like, or sometimes I find that my mouse maybe like I push it too far and it falls off the mat or something like that kind of thing. While with the other side, it's a little better. So I think there's really some truth to that, like abusing the natural comfort of how people actually play the game, not only like with the characters, but like physically how they interact with their keyboards and mouse.
And also this is a little different than when you're running on console too, because like the tendencies might be a little different for how you have thumbstick comfort, you know, and all that. But I do know that for me personally, when I'm playing McCree, and I've also watched some top Widow players and just top 500 players pinch pick into McCree and Widow. Traditionally, like you were saying, Curry, they also have the natural aim of like just flicking their mouse. And when they're the flick aimers rather than just the trackers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they'll flick like from the right side, they'll flick to the left and up a little bit to hit that head hitbox kind of on that sweet spot on the chin, so that you like can cover yourself as you're going with that little adjustment up and also to the left. Because when I'm in the practice range, I find myself like constantly training that. Like I have to force myself to put the cursor on the left of a character and flick right to practice my right flick shots for when that happens. Because my natural tendency is actually to aim all the way over to the right, almost further than I want to, so that I can flick left.
Yeah.
Because I'm so uncomfortable to flick right.
Yeah.
That's really, really important to mention.
Yeah, you develop some habits there, and some of them are not like optimal.
Yeah. It's always good to look at.
Okay, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Curry, sorry.
No. And yeah, I said it's always good to look at just a real life application too than just like in-game macro or something like that. But
Yeah, I
I
find that
guess
stuff really interesting. It's cool that you mentioned it.
One of the other things, I guess, the last thing I guess I didn't say about combat rule is it's just also used for dueling. Usually you want to take a duel knowing that you have it up. It's really bad to take a duel without having it up because you're just a sitting duck.
Yeah.
So if you want to look for an ISO play or something like that, then it's just important that you use that for dodging. So versus Doomfist versus Genji, basically how you use it is you want to get out of their frame. So what that means is they can't just shoot you without moving their frame. So whether if a Genji jet dashes onto you, you kind of want to dash forward, or dash forward to the right, not like dash back. Dashing backwards would probably be the worst thing to do, right? Because you're still in their frame. They don't have to do anything. They just hit you. So you kind of always want to get out of their frame when you combat roll in a duel.
Yeah, and that's a good rule of thumb to have. Like, don't take a 1v1. I would say don't take a 1v1 if your combat roll and flashbang are down. Either one of those is down, just don't do it. It's just better to stick with your team and kind of like linger with them until you know they're up, and then maybe you can take some risks. Like, I know, for example, sometimes you'll notice a tracer or a Genji that's trying to flank your Mercy, right? And you're like the guy that's kind of like keeping him at bay. Genji knows that you're right next to Mercy, so he won't jump you because he's scared of the flashbang, or same with Tracer, right? So they're waiting for the right moment to do it. Sometimes I'll get aggressive with them and like I'll try to push him back and hide around a corner, wait for them to come out, and I kill him just because I know I can roll and I have the flashbang. So you have that like upper hand right there. But let's say, for example, if for some reason I miss the flashbang, the Tracer is able to kind of like dodge me. Like, that's like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm back to my Mercy until I get the flashbang back up again.
It's really hard to isolate yourself without having that up.
Mm-hmm.
But I see a lot of like other good McCrees. They just straight up hide. Like, they just hide and then make sure they're not seen. And they just listen for footsteps. And once they hear Tracer, they just pop out and left clicker. It's just funny because like you don't have to like be doing damage the entire time if you can just do that, for instance, before a fight even starts.
I think it's actually
just make the fight continually 5v6.
It's nerve-wracking for the Tracers, for example, too. Like, let's say you miss your flashbang. That's like an immediate alarm on the Tracer's head. I was like, this is my opening. I need to get rid of this McCree. And like, most Tracers are expecting you to kind of like keep shooting at them. But try this. Like, as soon as if you miss your flashbang or for some reason you're not in the best position to fight the Tracer and she's looking for you, just do that. Like, go hide in a corner and like... It's like this psychological thing that they have, because most Tracers will wait for you around the corner, but if you don't come out like soon enough, they'll get super desperate and they'll just go and like search for you. And you'll be hiding like behind the spiller or something. Your flashbang comes back up, and as soon as they come out, even if they're like a little bit away from you, you can just combat roll towards them really fast. And one thing to keep in mind, and I noticed that not a lot of people know this, but flashbang has a relatively long range as long as you're using like the entirety of it. Like, most of the time you're shooting at the ground or to the side, but even if you throw it, if it reaches the max range, the explosion radius gives it like a little bit of extra range as well. It's almost like
7 meters with the explosion radius.
Yeah, there you go. So I've noticed like before, like I've been playing against some Tracers that have been dueling me, and I just like roll through the flashbang at max range, and it catches them with like the last little bit of the explosion blast and still stuns them, and you can get the headshot of them. And sometimes they'll write back like, whoa, what the hell? I didn't even know flashbang had that much range. And you're like, it does.
You can actually see it do in Genji deflect, not throwing it above the reflect, but there's sometimes where you can actually mess up and throw it directly into the reflect, but it's because it's max range, it'll still stun them, even though you shot it into the reflect. So it's pretty funny that you say that, because there's a lot of instances where a flashbang seems like it's like, I don't know, it's like a sniper, like it's pretty insane because of the distance that you can actually flash people.
And it's also
maybe not a sniper. maybe not a sniper, but you know what I mean. Like
yeah.
relative to what it's supposed to.
Mini sniper.
Yeah. Like a water gun sniper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's also the reason why you can get away with things like flashbanging above a Reinhardt's shield. Like the flashbang has this huge radius, so as long as you explode it like right above his head, the radius is enough to just catch like the topmost part of his little head. And as long as you touch any part of their body, they get stunned.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to keep this discussion moving. We got a lot of nuanced tips and tricks for you guys in the advanced section, but we need to finish up with Deadeye, and we got a lot of user questions in particular with this, particularly with some situations, and then overall evaluating how you use it. I think we actually kind of skipped around and talked about positioning while we're talking about the abilities themselves, but we can maybe touch on a little bit of the things that we missed and kind of wrap up discussion with a few things about matchups and or not matchups, sorry, engaging and disengaging with McCree. So let's talk Deadeye. So where to use, where to be, how to prioritize it, and also how many kills is enough versus when you're just going to pop it for zoning and for winning and closing out games. So Curry, take us away.
Okay, this is one of the main issues I see if I'm like coaching a lesser experienced player, is they're trying to get that 6K Deadeye, you know what I mean? Like they're just holding it all the way, just trying to get it. And one kill is enough. It's more than enough. If you get one kill, that's the pick you need. You make it a 5v6. Yeah, and how fast you charge Deadeye, it's just insane. So it's like, why would you just hold it for that 6K? If you get one, that's enough. Don't be greedy with it. That's a huge play in itself, because you just insta-killed somebody for free, and then you just can follow up and recharge it then, and you probably have it back up for next fight. So yeah, just one kill is enough. When to use it? So the safest way to use it back in the day, especially, you drop the bead and have your Lucio speed boosting you while you're deadeyeing, so you can get into a better position. They can't really run away from it. If you have a Zarya, if you have a D.Va, like to protect you while doing it, try to communicate with your team to have them pocket you while you're like, hey, I'm going to Deadeye, I need a D.Va Matrix on me, I need a Zarya shield on me, I need Lucio to drop the beat or speed boost me. Reinhardt, hold up your shield. Even though all the time they drop him down, and I end up dying because even when I tell them, yeah, hold up the shield, they're like, nah, I'm gonna flame strike, and then you're just dead. The best time is probably then. You don't want to just run in and it's Deadeye out of nowhere, and then you're just standing still. Yeah, you're just standing still in the middle of everybody and be like, what happened? Why my team not follow up? It's like, no, your team didn't follow because you're just standing in the open and like died for free. But the best thing to do is just try to have another ability help you out with it, so you can get maximum value.
This is super important because Deadeye sometimes is kind of like Fara's ult, right? It just makes you super, super vulnerable. Like, how many times do you ult as Fara and end up dying as well? Even if you get like 2 or 3 kills, like you die a lot of times because you're super vulnerable. Unless Zarya puts a shield on you or D.Va puts a matrix on you, then it becomes incredibly strong, because I feel like most people will try to take McCree out really fast. But if something comes on the way and stops them from that, they're sometimes not prepared for the follow-up. Right? They're like, oh, crap, he did not die, and now he is deadeyeing at me right now.
Yeah, so that's kind of the difference. Fara, like, that has damage at the start of her ult. Like, if McCree doesn't fire, like, there's no damage done at all. So it's like you kind of have somebody playing around you, because you won't get any damage out if you just do it.
Yeah.
Also, another way to use it also is just to break a shield barrier. Like, it's worth breaking it. Like, if you're in the Reinhardt, if Reinhardt comes back in meta, this is also just talking to future metas, right? If Reinhardt comes back into meta, and you can break his shield because they're all hiding behind his shield. If you don't get any kills, you still break his shield, right? You have your Reinhardt. If they have Shatter, then it's a freer Shatter. Like, it's you can use it to break a shield. You can use it to pressure, Like, it doesn't have to be a kill.
Yeah,
ideally
absolutely.
it is, but
I was gonna talk about that too. Like sometimes using Deadeye in other situations can be like a huge deterrent, right? You don't have to use it to land 6 kills or 5 kills every time you have it. Sometimes just using Deadeye is enough to completely like stop a push.
Yeah.
I like using it, for example, when you don't always have the luxury of having your team with you and like working together. Obviously, the better players you're playing against, sometimes the better off you're with these things, and you don't even have to ask for the cooperation. They're just kind of like ready for you.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
not every Overwatch game is like that, and sometimes you're
Oh,
kind
no,
of
yeah.
like have to Deadeye by yourself. And I find that the best situations to Deadeye is when something's about to happen, right? Like when the enemy team makes the move, when they speed boost in or they use like some ult and like ult Russian, if you're hiding in a corner and just Deadeye, immediately is like a stopping moment, right? It's like, oh crap. We all rushed inside and now we're trying to scramble looking for this McCree where he's at, and maybe they have to like hide, maybe the Lucio ult runs out or something. Like you never know, right? Like it can be used to like zone out people.
Yeah, and also you can also use it just after a push, even like what do you call it? Like if they do manage to push through, you can hide in, and then if they don't see you, right? Um, they don't have an angle on you. You just like I'm thinking of Hanamura second point, like if you're on high ground, for instance, right? If they ignore you and on high ground, it's just free. Like you can shut down a push so easily, just by like being up there. So you can also hold it for like during a push, I guess you could say, just to pressure people off the point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sometimes
Yeah.
I've even started using it in like I interweave it in the middle of the fight. Like for example, if I'm fighting like a pharmacy and I get a headshot on the Fara, and I just want to finish her off like right then and there, I might get the headshot and then Deadeye immediately after that. And because she's already kind of hurt, it loads up so fast that you just guarantee the kill right then and there. You don't have to worry. You can also use it after your clip runs out. I don't know if a lot of people
Yeah.
know this, but you can do like unload an entire clip, then roll, unload an entire clip, and right after you finish that and you have to reload again, just Deadeye, and it just
Yeah.
keeps the pressure up like even more. And like you said,
No, yeah.
you don't have to get 6 kills as long as you guarantee that kill and you stayed alive. That is worth it.
Yeah, and it's good that you bring up the Deadeye reload, because that's actually a very common use and it's pretty worth, in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying like always do it, but like there's certain scenarios where people have ult and they just kind of die for free because they don't Deadeye reload. So just when I say Deadeye reload, I'm also obviously talking about what you just said. How like you can hit Q or hit your ult and then immediately cancel to reload your gun. So just doing that sometimes will give you enough pressure and can even save the game. You know, it's happened multiple times to me. So
Yeah, and like
it's a very practical use of it.
I don't know if a lot of people know this, but like since the change, the minimum damage of Deadeye is actually pretty high. Like even if you don't
Really high.
if you don't wait any time, like literally you just use Deadeye and you use it immediately, it's still what is it like 80 damage or something like that?
I'm gonna pull it up while you guys are talking because like the change was extremely high. Like they made the adjustment on PTR and Andres was losing his noodle over this. Hang on. It's 250 damage in a second. Over the course of 1 second, it's about 250.
But there's like a minimum threshold, and I believe that it's 80. We'll double check it, but like right off the bat, you already know that you're doing 80 damage, even if you don't like hold it for any amount of time. You just like pop Deadeye and like click it right away.
Oh yeah, and also that's the other thing. You don't always have to see the skulls because it doesn't take account the damage that's about to be done too, obviously.
Yeah.
So sometimes clicking it early can net you a lot of kills actually, because you have to remember there are 5 other players on your team who are trying to do damage, right? So it'll net you a lot of kills. You don't have the red skull.
We have I have a couple of questions from the community, and I'm gonna read them to you and get your opinion on these. We got one from Mr. Steal Your Beef, and he says, does his ultimate feel inconsistent or unreliable? Even solo killing with Deadeye, it feels really bad when you have the Red Skull and they still get around a corner before the shot hits them. What changes would you choose to make McCree's ult make it better?
See, this is a really hard subject to talk about, only because I feel like if McCree's ult was better, he'd be pretty broken. But I think that his can be inconsistent, because I know that feel about when they turn a corner, even while you already loaded your shot, and I feel like a 120 tick server, this wouldn't be an issue, but right now it is an issue. So I don't think it's unreliable, but can be inconsistent. But yeah, it's like solo killing with Deadeye is completely fine.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I honestly don't think that his ultimate is in a bad spot. I think his ultimate is pretty useful, especially since they increase the minimum damage that it does, and like how fast it ramps up in damage. And like you said, I think that sometimes it's like the mercy syndrome, where you want to get like the 6 people resurrect, and you end up holding it for so long that it actually is detrimental. Like you either end up dying or you just can't get to it on time, and try and get greedy with like getting like this huge life-changing ultimates. But the truth is, like, if you just use it to like give you certain advantages, even small, like just getting 1 kill or stopping the team from doing a push or zoning out the enemy team at a crucial moment. All those things are already useful, and you don't have to get like, the entire team kill.
Yeah, and you have to remember there's no follow up for it, right? So it's like global. There's no follow up. Like and remember, it also all damage behind the shield as well, right? So like each shot will just like absolutely destroy a shield if there's 6 people behind it. I mean, like
I think what was it, 3 or 4 shots actually breaks the shield, and the other 2 will go through and kill the targets, won't it?
Yeah.
I think that sounds right. If that's given that all the shots are fully charged.
If you charge, because here's the thing, like the charge keeps going on as long as you're holding it. It keeps going. So eventually, it becomes like an insane amount of damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just kills.
Yeah, and just to confirm, the minimum damage was 80 from 20. So the damage after the first second slows back down to 20. It says damage accumulated over the first second increased from 20 to 80. So I don't really know how to interpret
minimum
that.
Damage
I'm guessing
80.
It's minimum damage.
So you can ult and then just automatically left click and do 80 damage.
I believe so.
That's what it means.
I'm guessing that's what it is.
Yeah, that's pretty good then.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a question from Tragic Zach.
Go for it.
Is this the one you were talking about, or do you want to talk about the one from Boyle?
I was gonna go into that one.
Okay. All right. Well, we have time for one more here from Tragic Zach about positioning, talking about how are you going to position yourself within the team. So frontline to win the frag battle, or fight in the back so you can defend from flankers. So we talked a little bit about the general rule of thumb when you're playing at lower, but how do you make the transition into higher tiers of play? Like, how do you make that call?
So this is very dependent on map, the other player you're playing against, in terms of DPS, and just generally how the game is going and how your team is playing. So if you're having a really good team, right, you can afford to be defensive, because you don't have to make any flashy plays, or you don't have to play out of your comfort zone. You can just kind of play for your team. Yeah, stay alive. If you're on Volskaya, let's say, right? If you're defending on Volskaya, point B, like it's a worth going 1-for-1 in that map, because your spawn's closer and stuff like that. So you can play aggressive. You can make these ISO plays as long as you get a kill. If you know you can get a kill, then it's fine to play that aggressive. But yeah, for the most part, it's just getting a feel for the other team, your own team, and then map specific. Obviously, map specific is just 2 CP. Actually, it's also Gibraltar. But so for instance, when on the first point on defense, like where the average part on Gibraltar, Okay.
Right. The catwalk.
Yeah, the catwalk. You can sit on catwalk, as long as the payload is all above the underpass, because the payload moves, right? So that means their line of sight of what they're looking at moves. Right at that one, it's on top. They can only look straight, right? If they try to look to the left up to catwalk, they're getting in a very vulnerable position. So because of their line of sight, it's pretty much free because that is within 20 meters of you, as well as just making them out in the open. So it's a very good spot for you. So yeah, it's just map specific and how you position.
This is first point? This is first point catwalk?
First point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's two catwalks in case you guys are wondering. There's one right outside of where the payload spawns, and then there's actually there's three. Then there's one with like the boxes on it with the room. That's the one we're talking about. That's the catwalk you're basically...
I'm talking about the one across classroom. Your classroom. It's like, you know how where is and it goes up to classroom.
Oh, the one way up there, right?
Yeah, way up.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah. That one.
Gotcha.
And then there's obviously a blue box too. That's an okay position if you can get.
Yeah,
you can
blue
take
box
control
is
of blue
very
box.
strong if you can stay there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
That's really solid. Yeah, Andres, do you want to wrap up?
Well, the last thing before we close out the entire discussion, and it's worth talking about, but what do you think counters McCree? When do you think that like you're playing a game and the enemy team is playing certain heroes or a certain strategy where you're like, all right, I don't think McCree is going to work here. I'm not being very effective. What do you think are the heroes that can shut him down?
So Soldier can shut him down if he plays with fall off and outside hero fall off. So meaning if he plays at like around 40 meters, you kind of can't do anything to him because he won't be able to. You can 2-tap him if you like double headshot him from that range, maybe. Yeah.
It might be a little short.
Yeah, it might be 3. It might be 3. Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do 3.
Even with double headshot. Even with double headshot, you won't be able to kill him. So 40 meters, 30 meters, you will be able to 2-tap him, but 40 meters probably not, and he still has no fall off, right? So it's that would be a really hard matchup, and counter it would be a 40-meter soldier. So probably on maps like Route 66, right? It'll be very difficult to play into soldier on those kind of maps, you know.
Especially
you really
on
have to.
Two.
Yeah. On almost on every point for
all of the points
66.
have a pretty good range.
Yeah.
You can abuse.
Yeah, Gibraltar might be difficult as well. Let me think of other maps. Basically a lot of the payload
Iconwall's
maps.
pretty tough.
Yeah, a lot of the payload maps will be and maybe hybrid maps. So Dorado second point could be difficult too.
Yeah.
Third point would be easy.
Yeah.
But
sometimes I also feel Diva can be a really big annoyance to McCree. Like if the Diva's playing it right and keeping the matrix where it's supposed to go, it can neglect a lot of your damage. Not only to mention your entire ultimate if she decides to use the matrix on you while you're deadying.
Yeah. So the thing with Diva is usually she won't have kill pressure on you unless you really mess up. But the thing is, she can just shut down and you still kill her, most likely. But she just wastes a good 10 seconds of your DPS, which makes it if your team without you loses, then I mean that's just how it is, because you kill the Diva, but then if your team loses the fight after Diva, like
then
even
they don't
before,
have your
like,
pressure. And usually the McCree as McCree, you want to be on the squishier heroes, right? You want to be focusing the Lucius, the Zenyatas, the Tracers, the Genjis, and if instead you have a Diva on your face, all of that pressure and damage is kind of like being neglected.
She kind of, it's not just like she does that to like a lot of heroes, and I mean that's why I think she's just bad for the game right now in the current state.
You're not a fan of the Diva Matrix either.
Yeah, Diva Matrix needs to go or needs to get reworked. It's a really bad mechanic in the game.
All right. Well, speaking of that, I think that we can spend about 5 minutes here, Andres, talking about Burnout, and then we can close the show.
Sounds good.
So let's Curry, I'm gonna let you just kind of go and talk what you think here, because I know Andres and I have played significantly less this last month and a half, I believe. At least me personally. Andres, you've been playing a lot of the Lucio ball when that came out, but maybe not as much comp. And in particular, it's kind of a combination of things for me personally. I played Hearthstone, and like many of you know, I have another show that I do for that. And so I got really excited because Arthas is like one of my favorite Warcraft heroes, and Lich King and all of that stuff is kind of the big synergy cards that they released in the last month. And I've been going AWOL playing that. To hit the highest rank I've hit in a long time, just like today, because I've been playing it. And Andres as well as just other things about the game just feeling unfun. And they're different for everybody, I think. And then a lot of the top end players that maybe aren't on professional teams, or even maybe they are on professional teams, or just overall top players streaming, are kind of getting burnt out. And we kind of want to talk a little bit about, with Curry, what he thinks are some of the key, maybe smoke signals, I guess you could say, or key indicators that we feel are the fires from a player standpoint.
Yeah, so I don't want to like sugarcoat things too much. So Overwatch is it's just dying in the sense of for high elo players. I talked to Calvin, I talked to multiple other players on how they're dying because of how Blizzard is just ignoring the high elo player base. And what this means is you can be rank 1 and you can have a gold player on your team. And I don't think it's fair to have a gold player on your team if you're rank 1. Like, that doesn't make sense. So you guys shouldn't be playing in the game. Like, your rating shouldn't be reliant on who has the worst gold player. And I know that sounds mean, but like if one gold player plays Lucio and the other one plays Soldier versus your Soldier and you're rank 1, right? I mean, who's gonna win? You know what I mean? Like, it's very unfair in terms of matchmaking, as well as just SR gains. So when I kind of talk about SR gains, I mean, you shouldn't be able to be a 30% win rate Mercy and be in top 500. Like, that should not happen. Like, it shouldn't matter. Like, you need to have a 51% win rate, just like in every game, to climb. And having a 30% win rate because you're one-tricking, because you get higher SR gains if you one-trick, is just incorrect, and it shouldn't be allowed.
So I think that's one of the main gripes that's been going around the community lately, right? Like, because of the way they have chosen to measure the SR, and this is not usually how most competitive games end up measuring the SR, right? You get flat gains depending on the enemy team's elo and your team's elo, whether you lose or win. That's kind of like how it usually goes. But in Overwatch, there's like this, I guess, more advanced mechanism where they try to gauge your performance based on how you perform with your hero, and it changes per hero, and it does lead to like certain anomalies, like the one that you're saying, where sometimes you will have some of these one tricks that play only one hero and have like a 40% win ratio, or sometimes even as low. I think I've seen as low as 36 in occasions, still reaching masters and grandmaster. And it does feel kind of weird, right? Like, how, if this is rating based on like your contribution and performance, it's really weird that some of these people end up climbing so far. And not only that, but the problem stems too when they are forced to play other heroes as well, and their level then becomes quite noticeable at those times.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Valkia even mentioned this in his stream. Like, he's been campaigning for kind of the thing that League introduced, which is the role selection. So for within the matchmaker, so that you're kind of like getting placed in a position where you're not getting in a game where there's too many people that want to play support, too many people that want to play DPS, for example.
I don't think that's a good idea, because
I don't think it's a good idea either, but I'm just putting it out there as this is something that Valkia is trying to find something of a solution that is maybe something that he's wants to either test out on PTR, or maybe something that he wants to put on the live service as a test case. I mean, I'm not sure what is correct here, but I do know that there is a couple things that you mentioned within the win ratios that were actually in sort of the fallout of the existing changes, because they did say, and I heard this from Blizzard as well as from EVA mentioning this about, he's like, you're not going to see your 36 win percent Mercies sticking around. So it's kind of those weird things where once they do roll out this change and people are still whining about it or still feeling like it's an issue, it will be until you get to the point where the win rates actually get them there. You know what I mean? Like, you do have to win some and lose some for you to drop even once the chain is introduced.
Yeah, and
does that make sense?
Yeah, and the biggest thing. Wait, before I go into the biggest thing, let me just address the whole role selector thing.
Sure.
Overwatch is not a game like League in the sense that anybody can just swap roles at any times, and sometimes it's necessary, right? So it's like it doesn't really anything because of how like you can just get into a game and then just change your hero all the time. Okay, now let me just talk about the biggest problem, which is the hard reset. So Blizzard, the way they do things is they kind of listen to their player base too much, in the sense that if somebody complains about elo hell, they'll be like, oh yeah, you know what, you're right, so let's go ahead and inflate everybody's rating, which they did in season 3. They didn't want a hard reset because people were complaining about playing versus better players, which is how it should be in their placement games, you know? Riot, for instance, they do a hard soft reset, which means the highest place you can place is Platinum 1, right? You can't place in Challenger. You know, Calvin, for instance, placed in 4600, you know what I mean? And I definitely think Calvin is that type of player, because he is that good. But, like, then you have a Platinum player who placed in 4000 in Season 3.
Yeah, it's like a gate.
A whole bunch of them, like a big part of them, actually placed in 4000. And I don't want to sound mean, but, like, there's a lot of them who don't belong there. And it's clear, like, to good players who doesn't belong there. You know what I mean? GM is the same as Platinum right now because of all these players who don't actually belong there. And it's just a mix of who gets the better quote-unquote GM players, and what that means
is the rank
is
distribution.
It's the actual GM players versus the inflated players who actually don't belong there. And this is something that Blizzard needs to address by hard resetting the entire ladder, making it so, one, you can't place at those insane ratings, and you have to work your way up. Like, if you're good enough, you will climb, you know what I mean? So, I didn't place, in Season 2, I didn't place very high. In Season 1, I didn't place very high, but I ended very high. In Season 3, I didn't place as low, but I didn't place as high, and I made top 100. You know what I mean? Like, it's something that Blizzard needs to realize that, okay, we shouldn't be listening to, the casual player base. We need to make ranked an actual competitive mode, not just try to please everybody and be like, oh yeah, you're GM, we're all GM. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that they need to go for.
Yeah.
And the truth is, there's so many ways to go about it, right? And I actually think that it was worth the try, like seeing how this elo system worked, because Overwatch is a game, like you said, like no other, and it's such a hard game to judge, like the performance, because there's so many different aspects where you can be adding to your team that are not necessarily like always frags, for example. So just measuring only kills and stuff like that, it sometimes is weird, because Overwatch is so complex in that way. So I think that it's interesting that they tried making such a complex rating system where they can gauge individually per hero and stuff. And they're probably like at a crossroads right now, right? Like, do we keep iterating on this system, and eventually, as Overwatch becomes, or like the idea of Overwatch becomes more of a reality, right? Like, we know what Overwatch is, how it gets played, what actually is good, what actually is bad, and what should we be measuring. Like, that rating might get more accurate, right. Or we could be like, listen, I don't think this worked. We should go with a more traditional MMR system.
No, exactly. And that's what they need to do, because you're completely correct. Because I'll just use this scenario, for instance, right? One game, I was playing Lucio, right? And it was the last fight of a King of the Hill. It was 2-2, and I knew they had Dragonblade, right? And I said, well, don't panic. I know it's at 80% or whatever, we need to take damage until 95% and make sure that I get beat drop because they have Genji Blade. Okay. We ended up doing that, and we pushed at the very last second, and the only people alive was like our tanks, and we ended up capping the point and winning the game off that. And there's no algorithm that can measure that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you even
you can't
try
measure
to measure
communication.
that?
Yeah, you can't measure that, and that
Right.
call itself won the game. So
Yeah.
Right.
they need to swap to a traditional SR game, and they don't need to try to be different. Like they need to just do something that works. Like Riot's system is not very different. I mean, it's a freaking chess system. It's the same thing. Now they made it all fancy with the divisions and tiers and all this in League of Legends, but like it's the same exact ranking system, elo system.
Yeah, and okay.
Yeah, I do.
To be fair though, we are at a time where like technology is changing quite a bit, and like now, if there's any time where like making a system like this might be possible, it's probably like around right now, right? We have all this like machine learning, we have like craziest algorithms that can like transform themselves and read the game. So there might be a time where they could iron out the system good enough so where it can gauge these moments, right? Like if let's say they have any machine learning algorithm that's constantly analyzing these matches and like trying to discern these moments, like you just said, that are so hard to judge. For example, like you made an appropriate call, but the game has no way of measuring that call, yet it won you the game. There might be a time where like we might get good enough and we can gauge that, but we're definitely not there yet. And this matchmaking is definitely not doing the best job possible. So like I said, I do think we're at a crossroads right here, and like I feel like some players are pulling towards the side of, okay, this is not working out, let's just go back to what we know. And I think Blizzard is still trying to kind of like stay true to their own belief and being like, well, and we also don't know what goes on in their backend, right? Like we don't know how they're developing this
what
or
they're building right now.
Yeah, I know, but I know what you mean.
I was gonna speak one thing before we kind of close out the discussion, just to reiterate what you said, Curry, about the hard soft reset of like making sure that you can only gain up to a certain point and then you have to climb. You know what I mean? So it's like the upper tiers are truly upper tiers.
It's like in
you
Hearthstone.
earn that.
It's like in Hearthstone.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't have win streaks after 5.
It's really crappy right now too.
I know, but at least that part is true, right? Like you can't have. You need to have a 51% win rate, right, in Hearthstone to actually climb. You
cannot climb after 5. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so you can't just like BS your way with a 30% win rate and hit legend. You know what I mean? So it's like
precisely.
Yeah, so there's not even that in Overwatch, and that's scary. Like it's not competitive.
I mean, there's even the other argument that I've been putting forth with a lot of our, I guess you could say, the large portion of the player base that's not, the plat players or the gold players that are getting into those random things because they play off hours on NA like me. But I mean, I've played at gold and plat for season 3 and plat basically from then on. And I've never had these crazy off meta things where I'm playing with like even a masters player. So the system isn't always like that. It's more frequent with the top level seeing the lower than the lower seeing the higher. So that's for sure an outlier and something that they're slowly iterating on. Why is this so common? And the other thing too is I agree with the player distribution being way off. Like the fact that I first joined Overwatch and I place in gold like that after not playing a shooter hardly all. Seems really odd. You know what I mean? Like, as a player distribution thing, it's like the highest thing should be a slope. The player base should increase drastically. Not in the middle. I mean, I'd like to think the player base is pretty good on PC, but I mean, you jump into a couple of gold games and you find out really, really quickly that there's a lot of people there that don't really grasp the firm absolutes of Overwatch. You know what I mean?
Oh no, I know what you mean, dude. No. My brother, he showed me this. He showed, when D.Va was first really OP, he showed me, he's like, look at this D.Va. And I was like, wait, what's wrong? He's like, he keeps suiciding his mech, and he keeps saying that baby D.Va is OP. He actually thought baby D.Va was the reason D.Va was OP. So he would suicide his mech at the beginning of every round and just stay at baby D.Va the entire time. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
baby word. D.Va main.
Yeah.
Baby
I always
D.Va
tell
main
my stream. Yeah. It was funny. I was like, I cannot believe this. He's like, yeah. He's like, look what I have to play with. I'm like, yep. This
Who
is the
needs
story for my
defense
stream.
matrix?
Yeah. You got Baby Diva, dude.
All right. Well, I think it's time to close the show on the Baby Diva. So if you guys like the show, please jump over to iTunes and give us an iTunes review. We got 2 this week outside of the US. We got 1 from Combat Lollipop in Canada, and It's Ethan EU in UK. Thank you guys for your iTunes reviews. Seriously, this is the best and the cheapest way, aka it's free, to leave an iTunes review to help the show. It helps us so much in search results and making sure people understand that the show has a high average of iTunes reviews to see what's important about the show when they're checking it out for the first time as well. And also special thanks to our patrons over at patreon.com/Omnic Lab. You guys make the oil and the gears run in the engine. It seriously is helping Andres and I drastically get to BlizzCon, and it is a continued support endeavor, meaning that every month, every week you support is infinitely helpful. And so the longer you can stay in the engine to help us out in the back end, the more you're actually doing mileage-wise to help the show. So special thanks to those doing the heavy lifting work on the diamond level, which is the top level of support, aka our sponsors. We have Ben W, Ice Weasel, Hannibal, Snowden, Lysome, Magic, Michael Kritz, Not Muad'Dib, and Rice Krispie, along with Sketchy Nonsense Podcast and Tragic Zach with Trinium. Thank you guys so much for being our diamond sponsors. We have no new patrons this week. This is like the second time ever in 1 week period we haven't gotten any new patrons. So if y'all want to get on that, that'd be great. Just kidding. But seriously, like if you guys can give us a couple bucks, donate a coffee a week here and there, that would be amazing and help us out a lot. If you guys want to find the show anywhere and everywhere, the best way to go to it is find it on our website, omniclab.com/links. Will get you any links that you're looking for the show. I say it every week and try to keep it short. So please do that. That includes email, Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, and our Discord, which is the biggest Overwatch community within the podcasting realm right now. We have got lots of people grouping up on console, on PC. We got low bracket, we got upper bracket, we got masters, we got diamonds, we got bronze, whatever you want. You want a group of people that are actually thinking about the game in a constructive way and looking to improve. That's the place to go. And last but not least, we want to highlight our guest, CurryShotTV. Where can people find you on the Twitterverse and on your stream to watch you play whatever you feel like that day?
On my YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, it's all the same. Twitch TV, it's all CurryShotTV.
Curry is 2 R's, the traditional spelling of the dish of lovely food.
CurryShotTV.
Awesome. And Andres, where can people find you?
If you want to find me, you can look me up on Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games. You can also find my music blog over at SoundCloud at iPlayMusic. You spell it IPLAI Music. And you can also find my podcasting endeavors over at audioblender.studio.
And you guys can find me in the Twitter and Instagram verse with the tag NotRob. If you want to find some Hearthstone show to talk about Hearthstone and kind of teach you some ropes, you can head over to VelonsChosenPodcast.com. That's where I'm going to be doing my show. We're also on iTunes and anywhere else you're looking for stuff. And then my side project, which is just a solo podcast, trying to keep everything under half an hour, closer to 20 minutes as possible. It's called Concept Craft. You have to type that in. It's 2 words, concept and craft. And that is a really, really fun podcast that I've been doing, trying to help just musings about content creation and burnout and just interesting topics that I find that I'm passionate about as well. So if you want to jump in there, it's a fairly inconsistent week, kind of bi-weekly, twice a month type thing. But we'll see how it goes. If you guys are interested, thank you guys for joining us on episode 66, talking about McCree and even just a little bit about kind of proposing some changes to improve the rank system. CurryShot, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. Special thanks to XRYZ for recommending you to the show and also for being amazingly fast with accepting and also scheduling this within basically 48 hours. That was pretty amazing.
Anything from a boy.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for us over here. And as we always say, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. Buckle up and watch the tumbleweed full. We'll see you guys next week. Hopefully you don't get dead-eyed first. Bye.
if nothing